Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Raj News. Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers. Good morning, Emmanuel. Good to see you again.
Hello, Emmanuel. Good morning.
Good morning, Adiswa. Good morning, Ruben.
Yes.
Yes, the minimum wage is still the main issue of the day. And these days' lead story goes thus. Fear of inflation mounts as Buhari approves new minimum wage to send enabling bill to National Assembly, transmits 3-year medium-term expenditure framework to the National Assembly. Then Labour's Central Working Committee meets today. Yes, then let's look at other papers before what they're saying. The Nation, workers excited as Buhari accepts 30,000 proposal, executive to transmit bill to National Assembly. Then the Punch, I am committed to giving Nigeria new minimum wage soon. Buhari, tripartite panel recommended 30,000 naira. That's according to Amapepu, the chairman of that tripartite committee. Then Daily Trust, Buhari, I am committed to new minimum wage. Then the Vanguard, how 30,000 new minimum wage sailed through. Buhari promises to close gap, take note of this, to close gap between 30,000, 24,000 proposals. Now, what is the true story? Has the minimum wage been accepted as 30,000 by the presidency? Because just before I came on set, I was reading one quite reliable news website, the Metro Watch, and they were saying that some sources within the presidency are saying that there seem to be misreading or misinterpretation of the president's speech to read that 30,000 minimum has been accepted by the president. But I think we'll have to wait also to see what the president will be transmitting in a bill to the National Assembly to get a very clear picture of the exact amount.
Well, I mean, the thing to just say is that I don't see how the federal government can, give something in the open and then through the back door take it back. Because organized labor has made it very clear is that it is 30,000 or nothing. Don't forget that these negotiations have gone on for quite a while. Even when the negotiations were originally completed, the federal government did not move fast enough. Then, labor threatened to go on strike. Hence the meetings of October 4 and October 5. And at the end of that, the meeting was also again, the negotiations again were deadlocked. And then there was another threat. So to imagine that at the end of the day, someone will still come around and say, all of that has not been concluded. No, that would be very poor management of an important national process or poor management of collective bargaining. And you could expect that labor will not accept any kind of tinkering with what has been, mutually agreed upon by that tripartite meeting. But I raised the point earlier about the process of getting this done. And I said, well, this minimum wage, this new minimum wage may not even take effect until maybe sometime late next year. If it is not part of the 2019 Appropriation Act, if the National Assembly does not act expeditiously on it. So the excitement of workers has to be moderated, okay? And there is still a lot more, I said earlier, that labor, organized labor, would have to do. The point about indexation, and I noticed that when Mrs. Amapepu was making her presentation, the part that was quoted was this point about, look, there's a lot of inflation within the system. As a result, we need to adjust the new minimum national wage. Our fear is that if inflation continues to rise at this rate, if the predictions by some of these international analysts come to pass, you could find a situation that by the time the Nigerian government begins to pay that 30,000 naira, inflation will have wiped it out. And it will be of no great use to the Nigerian worker. And of course, we will be back to square one.
Square one. Okay, I think that's the angle these days looking at. Fears of inflation mounts as Buhari approves new minimum wage. Above the masthead of this day, billionaire businessman Sonny Odogun passes away at 87. Yeah. I just noticed that a lot of prominent Nigerians in their 80s are just living the same.
Well, I think
Tony Anene recently, yes. 85. Alison Ayida recently, also in his 80s. Senator D.O.D. Dafenone,
yes,
also in his 80s, all just living the same gradually.
Well, I think we have to thank God for their lives,
yes,
and the gift of longevity that God bless them with. In a country where life expectancy is under 50,
yes,
anybody that lives to be an octogenarian, you know, is a man of special grace,
yes,
a man or woman of special grace. In some other countries like Japan, like Sweden, like the United States, you know, people are not alarmed when, you know, people live long, till 90, till even 100. But here in Nigeria, you know, when you hear that somebody is 85, 80-something, I mean, it's like a special creation, you know, because of the way people die young so rapidly. But what is even important about all the persons you have mentioned is that they made their mark.
Yes.
They make a difference. Chief Sonny Odogu, the Ide Ahaba of Asaba, that was his traditional
yes.
title, was a major figure with not just within his community, but also nationally in Nigeria. And, you know, he was a philanthropist, a man who was able to impact on many lives, either through the creation of jobs or through the support, you know, of other people's efforts. Chief Anthony Anene, I mean, okay, some people have criticized him. They say he's Mr. Fix-It. But he was also a very distinguished Nigerian and one of the key figures in the consolidation of the democratic process in Nigeria since the return to civilian rule in 1999. And, you know, a major player in the building of party politics and in providing leadership for a younger generation of Nigerian politicians. Alison Ayida, I mean, he was part of that set of those
super permanent
super palm sex. At a time when the civil service, when the public service in Nigeria was dominated by the best and the brightest. And when you talk about Alison Ayida, what comes to mind is what Nigeria can do to reinvent that golden past when, you know, the civil service of Nigeria was the engine room of governance. And that coincided, of course, with, you know, the success of Nigeria's third development plan. Yes. So we need to recreate, you know, some of these people because they don't seem to make them like that anymore. You know, our value system has collapsed, and you have an emerging generation of people who are just interested in instant gratification. And if you have a country of people sold on the idea of money and instant gratification, then, of course, the value system of that country is already damaged.
Yes, talking about the legacies of that generation.
Yes.
Senator David Dafenone.
Oh, David Dafenone.
Of the Second Republic Senate, where you have
correct.
Abraham Adesanya,
yes.
Chief Odebi.
Yes, Jonathan Odebi.
Your top Nigerians. And when they made their contributions on the floor, you sense patriotism, you sense of duty. I don't think we have that today.
And it was on the basis of that Senator Joseph Wires, Senate President yes. in the Second Republic, once said, look, that the Senate that he presided over, he hasn't seen any other Senate like that, because the Senate of that time was a Senate that was driven by ideas. One more thing about Senator David Dafenone. He was also the accountant yes. who reproduced himself, yes. and he made the Guinness World Book of Records of having put together a family where everybody, you know, is an accountant. Yes. We commiserate with their various yes. families. Yes.
Indeed, it's a big challenge for coming generations to fill these big shoes that these ones that have left fill. Yes. It's also a challenge for society. You find that most of these abnormalities is usually centered around malfunctioning, abnormal society upbringings. You get rich quick. This generation just want to instantly make those monies, and nobody's really particular about what you're giving back to society. You know, it's just
your
what is society?
To society.
Exactly. So it's a challenge for everybody, really.
No, it's even about human capacity in Nigeria, the skill set. you know, you see an emerging generation that does not want to apply itself. And unfortunately, you know, many of these young persons in Nigeria, unfortunately, you know, so many of them are trained abroad. But they come back and then you see, you know, culturally displaced persons, you know, who in terms of being relevant and fitting into the system, you know, have issues. The ones that are trained in Nigeria are even worse. So it's something about how we develop human capacity in Nigeria. Most of these people that we were talking about, some of them were products of the colonial education system. Some of them did not even have more than Standard 4 or Standard 3.
Yes.
But the Standard 3 graduate, Standard 4 graduate of LA times in Nigeria, yes, you know, in terms of comparison, will probably be smarter than the graduate of today.
They did a lot to develop themselves.
Yeah, self-application.
Yeah. Yes, they did a lot. So, nostalgia there.
This is not to say to though that they were also, you know,
no rascals.
No rascals. There were also people who did not apply themselves in that older generation.
Okay.
But we talk about, you know, the stars, the ones that do well, the ones that become icons.
And we remember them as such.
Yes.
Yes. Now let's look at the Punch newspaper above the masthead. Kano Assembly vows not to stop Ganduje's probe. Recall that yesterday we report a court order saying that all investigations should stop until there is a court ruling on the status of the investigation and all that. But the Kano State Assembly has said, House of Assembly has said that the committee set up that they are going on with their, that in any case, the committee was not mentioned in that judgment. Because yesterday we also saw it as the court interfering with a legislative process. And of course, they have rightly, if you ask me, take their stand that, look, we are doing our job, we have a job to do, we are going on with that job.
The pro-democracy lawyer group that took this to court argued that the House does not have the constitutional powers to probe this case, and that's why they went to court in the first instance. And hearing the chairman of that committee speak yesterday to say that it's going to go on anyways because the court did not, you know, didn't mention that we should stop our work. We're going to go ahead.
What does the story say? What did the lawyers get? An ex parte?
Yes, an ex parte.
Another ex parte.
Yes.
You know, and that is why, you know, the president of the Federal High Court on one occasion had to say, to discourage lawyers, you know, judges, from granting ex parte orders. As to the right of the legislature, of course, it's perfectly within the right and the province of a state house of assembly to investigate the conduct of the governor. I mean, all they need to establish is to say, well, he's probably guilty of gross misconduct. But what they are still doing is just investigation to see whether there will be a prima facie case to invoke that section of the Constitution that gives them the powers, you know, to remove a governor from office if he's guilty of misconduct. But I guess that the governor, too, is trying to play smart, you know, getting some NGO to go and get an ex parte order.
Yes. Well, let's see how that pans out, because whatever the outcome of that investigation by the House, they will need to act on it. If it's cleared, that is one issue. But if they find him culpable, then I think they will have to take the next step. Otherwise,
No, they don't need to find him culpable. They just need to establish,
yes,
you know, that there is a matter here. And then they will have to take a decision, you know, whether he's guilty of gross misconduct, whatever, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, that a case of gross misconduct has been established. As I said, maybe nothing will come out of it. It's election season. Kano is a very strategic state, you know, and at the end of the day, the major political parties, you know, the APC, which is the ruling party, will not want to joke with Kano State. The PDP has his eyes also trained on Kano State.
Yes.
So maybe the political side of it would prevail.
Okay. Daily Trust, of the lead story, Buhari, I'm committed to new minimum wage. But above the lead story, INEC begins display of voters register for public scrutiny. That exercise started yesterday. And persons, individuals are going out to check for their names. And, of course, there are also a number of issues those who are still carrying their...
Permanent voters.
No, not permanent now, the temporary.
Oh, the
what
temporary.
happens? How soon will everybody who registered get their PVCs? And we also have cases of PVCs lying idle, uncollected. So there are a number of issues INEC will need to deal with one way or the other to ensure that, of course, everything about that election is done in a very transparent manner. The vanguard, let's look at the vanguard. Nigerian army can't face us if we have arms. Shites. So the point they're making is that, look, they were not armed. They were not armed.
I get the point.
Yes, Contra, it's not like they are calling for a challenge. That if indeed they were armed, that the Nigerian army cannot face them. That's what they say. But again, we don't want this army-shites clash to degenerate, because there's all concerned persons and even the international community, they've been cautioning that the Nigerian state must not allow the Shiite issue to degenerate into a Boko Haram kind of face-off, insurgency, in which case the Nigerian state is not even prepared for that kind of face-off right now, because we are still dealing with the Boko Haram insurgency after supposedly, technically defeated. But so it's better the government handles this matter with great care and do the needful, charge their leader to court, or release him on bail, which the courts anyway granted El Zarzaki, the leader of this group. Then The Guardian, Nigeria as The Guardian, their lead story, how are escaped assassination by Ekweremadu? Yes, on the floor of the Senate yesterday, the Deputy Senate President made that report of how there was an attempt to assassinate him. But the police spokesman came out yesterday, Jimoh Moshood, came out yesterday to say that their preliminary investigation into the matter shows that it's a matter of a robbery or just burglary, not assassination. But they need to also look at the matter more closely.
Well, it's scary, though. I mean, Ekweremadu is a deputy Senate president.
Yes.
I'm sure he doesn't live in, you know, in an easily accessible neighborhood. He's also a politically exposed person, given the importance of his position. To think that somebody will sneak into his house, find his way all the way to the bedroom,
yes,
and then try to do damage, do harm. I mean, what were the security people guarding him? What were they doing? Where were they? Okay? And I think that, you know, Senator Ekweremadu is right to say that, look, this is a case of attempted assassination. That is the way it will appear to him. We were in this same country when
Chief Bola Ige,
right, as
Minister of Justice,
had security people and Attorney General of the Federation, had security people around them, and then, you know, the assailants who killed him managed to enter and go all the way to his bedroom. So if you were in Ekweremadu's shoes, you know, you would be scared. I mean, Deputy Senate President, somebody will just find his way into his bedroom, just like that. So I don't know how thorough the investigation by the police is, but I think that they should not rule out all options quickly, because this is the thing with the Nigeria police. When something happens, within 24 hours, they have already jumped to a conclusion.
And ruled out.
And they have ruled out other options. Now, where this kind of thing is concerned, you know, you don't, oftentimes, I mean, I'm not a policeman. Oftentimes, what appears to be the issue, the problem, may not really be real issue. So what quality of investigation have they carried out? However, I think Senator Ekweremadu should seek, you know, more protection, well, from the same police, considering that this is a political season.
Yes.
We also have that the Senate has asked its committee to interface with the Nigerian police to find out what exactly happened. Because,
so that they get to the roots of the matter.
Because the Deputy Senate President also raised a concern that it took quite a while for the 911 call to come through, for the police to show up. And he wondered why that was. So there's a lot of unanswered questions here. And hopefully the Senate committee will get that done. And then the police itself will get the job done.
Just before we go to the foreign story, I think just one more Nigerian story. Above the lead story in The Guardian, Southeast monarchs set to end Osu other caste system. I think this is a welcome move, that in this age and time, we still have this kind of caste system in some areas, especially in the southeast of the country, where certain groups are branded as outcasts. They cannot marry others within the society and they're on their own. So I think if the Southeast monarchs are looking at this with a view to ending the Osu caste system, it must be a welcome development.
Well, you know, the Osu caste system is a case of discrimination. It's a case of the abuse of the right to human dignity and the abuse at the same time of the right to freedom of association. And it's part of the collective cultural unconscious, or if you like, the subconscious in Igbo land. So much literature has been written about it. So one, it is illegal, it is unconstitutional. But I say it's something deep in the psyche, because when you see an Igbo person, you don't know who is Osu, who is not Osu. But an average Igbo man will tell you that there is a way they know. Even if you do not know, when you want to marry into certain families, you will be told that that family is a family of outcasts. So if the traditional rulers are taking this progressive step, I think it's a good thing, it's a good development, because what they are trying to do is to reorientate the cultural psyche, you know, of the people of Igbo land. However, at the end of the day, families will still make their choice, because this discrimination is not done in the open. It's done very subtly, you know, and there are all kinds of stereotypes. They will tell you, when you see an Igbo woman who is very beautiful, she must be an outcast. And I say, how? We are all human beings, you know, but these things still happen.
Yeah.
Not just in Africa, also in India,
yeah,
where you have the caste system.
But if the traditional rulers are taking it upon themselves,
who are the custodians of
culture, then I think if they really mean it, then they should be able to drive this down the society of in Igbo land.
This is a very good time and happy time for human rights activists, because this comes just barely 24 hours after some communities in Osun State, which is seen as one of the highest out of the 5 states in Nigeria that still practice FGM, female genital mutilation, came together to say we are stopping this practice. So we are seeing that happen there. We're seeing going to the east. We're seeing this happen. I think human rights abuses have come to the front burner again in a positive light to be stopped, and it's great to hear this news.
Yes, I think it should be added that now that traditional rulers in the East are taking a proactive step, you know, to end discrimination, particularly not just against women, but generally, there are still certain other cultural practices in Igbo land that can be addressed. For instance, widowhood rights and the abuse of women. In some communities in Igbo land, they still have very obnoxious traditional practices relating to widowhood. Then, of course, women's rights.
For that cuts across many societies in Nigeria.
Where maybe others you borrow from the example. And then also you also have the problem of the girl child, okay, discrimination against the girl child, particularly in terms of women's inheritance rights.
Yes.
It had to take Mojoku versus Mojoku for that issue to become a big issue, you know, in Nigeria. But it still happens. You will be told that, oh, once a woman has gone to her husband's house, then, you know, she cannot inherit again. So particularly if the man dies intestate. Okay, so you have many of these issues, all forms of discrimination, not just in Igbo land, as you have added, but also elsewhere. In some communities in Delta State, only the first son can inherit the parents' property. Yes. Okay? All other children are disinherited automatically.
Or they are the mercy of the first son.
It's the first son. You know, among Urubus, where you come from, when a man dies, you know, it's his son that will lead, even if that boy is number 5 or number 10.
He becomes the head of the family.
All the female children ahead of him, they will have to queue up behind him.
Yes.
Even if the eldest among them is 30.
It's only a man that can be the head of the family.
Placing a premium on the boy child.
So,
which I will not support, really. Well, but that is the culture.
You are an honorable man.
Yes.
You will not support
but
that.
I have 3 beautiful girls, so you can understand where I'm coming from. Now, let's just move over to the foreign newspapers. The Daily Mail. Why won't they lock up the 9 thugs? Now, for criminals, there is the law in the UK put in place by the Tories in 2015 that once somebody has been caught, an adult, with a knife in a crime scene once, for the second time, he must spend at least 6 months in prison. But it has been discovered that this is not being followed by the judges. Nearly 2,000 repeat offenders avoid jail despite this law. And this revelation is coming on a day a woman found her 16-year-old son stabbed to death on the streets of London, which happened to be the 5th such killing in
1 week.
In 6 days. And the 115th knife killing in London this year alone. So it's a very serious issue. And to now whittle down the law that says such persons should be jailed at least once you are found with a knife, the second time you should go to jail for at least 6 months.
Well, I mean, what the protesters are saying, the people, you know, bringing this up are saying, is that the judges must issue stronger sanctions and apply the law in cases of knife attacks. But there are other issues involved. The investigations that have been conducted on this matter show that knife attacks usually occur in particular neighborhoods and usually at a certain time after school hours.
Yes.
And the recommendation is that perhaps a second look should be taken at closing hours.
Yes.
Okay, to see whether this has some kind of, correlation.
In fact, if I may just add the Guardian newspaper, UK, actually has that headline. Yes. Change school closing times to curb stabbings, says doctors.
Correct.
So it's a fact.
Beyond that, the Metropolitan Police is also being advised, you know, to do more policing in some of the already identified vulnerable areas,
yes, where
to serve as a disincentive. The third point in the investigation, investigation that has been conducted, is that it's not just about numbers. It's also that the victims are even much younger. About a decade ago, you know, school children who were victims of knife attacks will be about 17-year-old.
Yes.
So you would think that this is a teenage problem. But now the age range is as low as 12, 13. And that's why, you know, they say that, you know, the state, the authorities must take, you know, a keener interest in this, and the judges must apply stronger sanctions and apply the law.
Yes. Now let's move over to the Daily Express. Give war widows pensions they deserve. Now, the battle to end injustice for military families is on, and the Daily Express is leading this campaign. You know, they are demanding justice for about 300 women. According to the law, soldiers who died in battlefront, their widows and families are entitled to their pensions without tax-free for life.
But except they remarry.
Yes, but this is a new dimension, that once they remarry, they lose that pension, which I find quite, if you ask me, very offensive. You mean a woman who has suffered, lost her husband in the battlefront. Now you want to deny her the right to fall in love again.
Well, the thing is that the special grants that is given to widows of servicemen, you know, is personal to that individual. And the assumption is that, you know, if the man dies in service, then they take care of the widow. One particular lady was denied her benefits, Anita something, you know. Then she went to court, and then people took an interest in the matter. And so it becomes a case of, what is the ideal situation?
Yeah.
What is best? All of this is coming out again because there have been talks about reviewing those benefits upwards.
Yes.
Okay, so you are reviewing it upwards and then you want to alienate some people, and hence you have this debate. But I see you are looking at it from the
yes,
from the emotional side.
Yes. You can't deny a woman the right to fall in love again when the husband is dead, because so-called can come from not just the financial side, but from the emotional side also.
I don't know about that.
Unfortunately, that's so much we can take on the newspaper headlines this morning. Despicable, though, to choose between benefits or love. Many thanks, Emmanuel. It's time now for a short break. When we